So thank you very much, Angus, for talking to us this morning. Maybe I can start by asking you why the Rebuilding Macroeconomics Centre was actually set up in the first place.
The Economic and Social Research Council issued a call which really raised two concerns that they have. First, a perceived disconnect between academia, particularly with respect to macroeconomics, and policymakers. And second, the view that there has perhaps been something of a monoculture in economics, but again with particular regard to macroeconomics. I think it's not a stretch to say that, of course, both of these concerns were probably heightened during and in the aftermath of the global financial crisis, where the link between academic macroeconomics and what practitioners had to deal with perhaps was not as close as one would have wanted. And secondly, that the dominant paradigm in the run-up to the crisis, in hindsight, perhaps had some shortcomings, quite significant ones, such as, for example, not even having a financial sector. That became a glaring fault. And the power of that monoculture in academic departments was something of a concern. So both of these factors, brought out really by the global financial crisis, was the motive for the ESRC issuing the call.
And why did you and NIESR particularly want to bid for it and lead this centre?
Well, my personal career has gone through working in academic institutions to working in policy-making environment, particularly during the crisis.
So you were actually there on the spot in Treasury?
Oh, yes. I was wrote a significant amount of the advice. I was very involved in at least the Treasury's response during the crisis. I'd also lived through the Asian crisis, which was in many ways, it's hard to believe it, but in many ways probably more dramatic. It really almost pulled countries apart. And it was after that that I decided to return to academia, having realized just the extent of damage that misguided macroeconomic and financial policy could lead to huge detrimental consequences in social and human terms. It was really very shocking what happened in Asia, as was the response afterwards, which was this was just about crony capitalism, nothing at all to do with either economics or finance or the whole system, and everybody moved on. Well, 10 years later, it came and returned to our shores. The parallels were uncanny. And so it was really through that process that my personal interest in actually trying to change things was really had been fermented. For the National Institute, which is the host of Rebuilding Macroeconomics, the National Institute has always tried to be involved in the debate between academia and, again, policy making. And that is why this was really such an ideal place to host this network. So they were the main reasons. I think the reason why we were successful is because again, the National Institute of Economic and Social Research was that the ESRC's call particularly asked for to bring into interdisciplinary knowledge and new methods. And of course, the economics and the social research in NIESR play, it's long been part of our tradition, so it's quite straightforward to do that. And indeed, the structure of the network has got more non-economists in it than economists.
And actually, I suppose it doesn't actually, your network or winning bid didn't have the so-called heterodox economics community as such, did it?
Well, we had people who take part in, say, post-Keynesian conferences, who are known post-Keynesian, have published work in post-Keynesian journals. We have people who have worked in new methods in macroeconomics, such as agent-based modeling, Both of those people I'm thinking of are in the management team. So the management team's 5 people. So there's a limit. There's one economist who does attend so-called heterodox conferences. There's an anthropologist, a psychologist, and a complexity theorist. So I think that's enough diversity, at least in terms of scholastic background.